But I want to get to some of the questions about your whole FIFA article.
Sure.
Actually, your article that closed out the bid, for your trying to run for the FIFA presidency, read somewhere between maybe a James Bond movie and an Austin Powers script, with the curtains guy. But I think you explained your run, I think, adeptly by comparing it to Norman Mailer's run for mayor of New York City. I thought, the aesthetic was tongue-in-cheek in nature, yet you were willing to go through all the roles and rigmarole to make it happen. But let me ask you this. Had you actually received a nomination from, let's say, American Samoa or whoever, would we still be talking about this now? I mean, would you honestly still be running?
Oh, yeah. Had it happened, we had talked about this with my editors at Sports Illustrated about what might happen if a country, a federation did want to nominate me, and that obviously would have taken it to a new level of seriousness, and one in which we had essentially agreed that I would stop, doing journalism for those 2 months at least,
right,
while I was an official candidate. Because, look, I mean, that would have been a pretty big deal, and all along here it's been a little tough knowing when a line would have been crossed, and I certainly didn't want to cross a line and lose credibility for my journalism, and it became a challenge also too, just to do my regular journalism, which I was doing full time during this whole stretch over a 6-week period after I announced to the deadline for nominations when I got out. And so I had magazine stories on, Jose Mourinho, Charlie Davies, Michael Bradley, was doing a weekly web column. And I didn't expect that I would get the overwhelming global response that I did, especially from the media. And so, I did dozens and dozens of interviews.
Right.
That I'm glad there was interest, but it honestly became something close to a second full-time job. And so now that it's died down a little bit, things are getting a little bit back to normal. But it was a tough thing to have to manage both.
Yeah. And as far as, the thing that struck me, even if you were Bill Clinton or Chuck Blazer, it seemed kind of regardless that you might get a nomination, but the actual idea that an American could win the FIFA presidency, I mean, how likely is that? Because it seems we still don't have the soccer clout to make that happen, or am I off base there?
No, I honestly think Bill Clinton could run, but would lose. Much in the same way that he spoke on behalf of the U.S. At the World Cup bid in Zurich in December and lost. Yeah. What we've seen with these FIFA guys and the people who have power within FIFA is they love to get their picture taken with Bill Clinton or David Beckham or Prince William and then vote against them. Because, I mean, that way they get the best of every world. Star power does not equal real power in FIFA. And I think it's important to make that distinction so that if you're a FIFA outsider, I am fully convinced you have zero chance of winning a FIFA election just because of the built-in systemic advantages that any FIFA insider like Blatter or Ben Hammam has.
Yeah. Well, regarding the futility of running against Blatter, I think my question was, if it's so dangerous to oppose Blatter, how is it that Ben Hammam, is getting away with running against Blatter? Is he just a paper tiger? Are there any repercussions for him and his country?
I'm not sure. I mean, you look back at previous times when Blatter has been challenged, and the last time was 2002 by the guy from Cameroon who's on the executive committee, Hayato, and he's still on the executive committee. He's not viewed as a heavyweight, though. So take that for what you will. I mean,
right.
he's still around, but by no means a powerhouse. And so we'll see what happens with Ben Hammam. I mean, it's a strange situation in the sense that he was a huge power behind Blatter winning in 1998, supported him financially, was part of Blatter having a private jet taking him all over the world for his campaigning.
Right.
And there's been a break since then. And yet at the same time, I've met Ben Hammam. He's a nice enough guy to talk to, but the changes he's talking about, some of them are okay, but they're not major changes, and the organization needs major changes. And the biggest issue, I think, for most people is the simple question, is FIFA corrupt? And on that question, both Blatter and bin Hammam have the exact same response. No, I am certain FIFA is not corrupt. And I don't know how anyone can be certain of that. And that's why, when it comes down to it, I think they're both just FIFA insiders who've been there for a long time and don't really want to take on the reforms that the organization needs.
Yeah, I mean, bin Hammam even said, I don't even collect a salary, so I don't know what the big problem is here, right?
That's what he told me. I mean, I like the idea that he wants to at least put out there what the guys on the executive committee make, what the president makes. I mean, this is basic standard 101 nonprofit organization requirements in the U.S., but unfortunately in Switzerland, it's not. And yet those guys at FIFA are trying to kind of have it both ways. They're saying, oh, we're very public in our financial report about how much money goes to where, but when it comes to actual individual income, like what Blatter makes or what an individual ExCo member makes, they refuse to divulge anything.
Yeah. Well, we're running out of time, but I did want to get a couple more things in. One, Bill Archer of Big Soccer wrote an article where, he said, listen, you've had the chance, you being Grant Wahl, to criticize FIFA for a long time, but apparently he feels that you haven't used your bully pulpit at SI to be more critical beforehand. But what say you to Bill Archer's thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I understand and respect what his passions are, and they're very much personal passions that he has about the topic of FIFA politics. And I think there's different ways to use media platforms to shine a light on FIFA. And certainly this thing I did as far as running for FIFA president was one way, and perhaps a novel new way of shining the light on that, and certainly got a lot of attention around the world, and a lot of people in many different countries asking the questions that need to be asked about the FIFA electoral process, which has plenty of absurdities. But that doesn't mean that I can't do traditional journalism on FIFA. I just became a full-time soccer writer a year ago, and I think this is probably part of my focus, one of my many focuses on soccer around the world, and will continue to be. And one thing I would say is, just because SI is yet to publish a major investigative expose on FIFA does not mean we haven't looked into it and aren't continuing to look into it. And I guess what I don't quite understand with a guy like Bill Archer is that he's really been very critical on several occasions now, basically saying the same thing, and I don't think he and I actually disagree on much at all. I don't think there's a big difference in how we approach things, and I just think there's way too much divisiveness out there in the very small kind of American soccer community, unfortunately, and I'm not going to be a part of that. I think if he and I sat down, we would probably find a lot of points of agreement and very few points of disagreement. Yeah,
I think if you did, that would be the case. Actually, Bill talked about several experiences with us where that, in fact, happened. And with Garla Sepp and others where he's had conflicts with before. But I have to agree with you, and Brett and I have pointed this out several times on our show. There seems to be, between different writers and different commentators and analysts of the sport.
Civility is good. That's about the best thing for me to say. And I have no problem talking with people who disagree with me. But if you're going to take it into personal stuff, if you're going to, do that sort of thing, if you're going to keep on hammering negatively, at some point I'll probably disengage from that, just because that's not what I'm about. But if you want to have a good conversation, like I view it in terms of, and I view everything connected to big soccer this way. It used to be maybe 8 to 10 years ago when it first started that I felt like I wanted to I could sit down and have a beer and enjoy talking to people on big soccer, and I thought that was what was great about it. And unfortunately, over the last 5 years or so, it's become populated by quite a few people who are not people I would want to sit down and have a beer with and enjoy disagreeing and just shooting the breeze. And I hope it can get back to that, but unfortunately, I don't know if it will.
So, some of those people are a great way to waste time if you have time to waste, though.
Well, Brett apparently spends some time doing on big soccer, but and there are some really great discussions on there. But you're right, some of it is a little temperamental, and hopefully we do see, because in the end, Grant, and you're well aware of this, we're all out trying to do the same thing, and that is grow the sport in this country and inform people about what's going on and keep them informed as much as possible.
No, I think so. And when I went full-time soccer in January of last year, I left college basketball, where I'd been SI's top guy for it for about 10, 12 years. And some people might have looked at that as a demotion, but it was something I wanted. I had always wanted to be full-time soccer. I want to do something that's kind of breaking new ground in a sense, and there's fewer of us in American soccer journalism. And actually among the mainstream American soccer writers, most of us have always gotten along pretty well. There's a couple of exceptions. But for the most part, it's a good group of people, and not just a good bunch of soccer people. And so I do hope that continues as the sport gets bigger, because it is getting bigger, and that's exciting. It should be for everyone. Yeah,
it is. And not that we're all going to be walking lockstep or holding hands or anything like that.
Right.
But, it's nice that we can have good civil discussions about various things happening in the sport. So, I want to thank you. We probably held you over time, and thank you, Grant, for coming on the show and spending this time with us. And hopefully you'll join us again down the road.
Thanks a lot, guys. Have a good weekend.
All right. Take care, Grant.